Hello all, this is Dr. Dave Maslach talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3, and in this particular video I wanted to talk to you about what is the most important part of a research paper. So if you don't know me, I'm an associate professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There were so many people that helped me out that I wanted to pay the favor forward and to help you out. So I asked the reciprocity community on YouTube, I've been asking polls every once in a while, and I got a response of 35 individuals. It's the summer of 2020 at this moment, and 35 people responded. My audience was primarily PhDs and people thinking of going and becoming a PhD. So I'm assuming that people actually responded, know what a research paper is, and they have a great understanding of what it is. And so I asked them, what is the most important parts of a research paper, particularly when you're going for journal submission, if you're thinking of doing that. So, 60% of the people, so I was actually surprised by this, 60% of the people actually said that it was meaningful contributions and implications. Another 20% said it was strong methods and results. 11% said a strong introduction, and 6% said a good theory in terms of where they and what it actually means. So funny thing is theory people don't think that matters as much. And so here's my sort of take on this, and I agree with a lot of these assessments, right? So the first one, I really do agree with the contributions and implications to the theoretical, to what you're actually trying to contribute to. But, I was really surprised that fewer people gave the data as much of an emphasis. Now, I would actually went back and looked at it. I think often you do win a paper not getting towards and getting to the end of a research publication and getting that out there, but one of the most important things is actually having interesting data that people are excited about. I know it's kind of a difficult thing to sort of put your finger on what it means to be interesting, but it's kind of quirky or different or novel, or people would not have seen the data before. I think data is really important often from my own perspective, and there's more to it than just the data. And you have to think about what is the research question, and is the research question interesting? So that's where a lot of people get tripped up with the data, and whether the data itself is interesting as well. The reason why I think that this is critical is that if you have some interesting data, then the reviewers or the journal editor can help you out in terms of exploring things. Now, here is the rub, I think, and this may be the reason why people are sort of suggesting data is not nearly as important as I thought it was, is that data availability is becoming it's everywhere now. Collecting data is somewhat easier than it was even 10 years ago, and it's getting easier and easier to collect data. The challenge is to figure out what does interesting data look like, right? So there's so much data available. What is sort of novel? And that's where you have to understand the theory and what you're actually looking at. You have to look at what other people have said about that particular data and take a deep dive into what it is. So I'm going to agree with the idea that a really important part is the implications and contributions. So that's actually, I was going to point that out. And it's thinking about, so the implications and contributions, it is really about theory, to be honest, at the end of the day, where you're thinking about what have we learned and explaining to somebody else what we actually have learned with this particular thing. And does anybody actually really care with this particular research study? Now, I get tripped up in terms of what's a good implication and what's a good contribution, but often it's thinking about, how are we advancing what we understand about the current theory. So that's where you have to actually have a good understanding of what the theory is behind how things actually work before you jump in and have an implication. I see far too many research articles, I see far too many things that are just, they just don't have very good implications because people just don't understand what the theory is. They don't understand what's currently out there at this moment. And, explaining why that's an interesting thing is a challenging thing. And now this is the one that I was really, really surprised on, is that I emphasized, in my own view, I think the introduction is really, really tough. So if you were to work with senior scholars, they are going to almost always say it's the introduction, it's the framing that is going to win a paper or not. And people struggle a lot at thinking about the introduction and how to frame it and how to sell it. Because what ends up happening is that 4 pages into a research article, when somebody's reading it, they get kind of bored, just like watching these YouTube videos. I know the vast majority of you will stop at this moment because you're 3 minutes in. 3 minutes and about 30 seconds is when everybody stops watching my YouTube videos, or the average person stops watching my YouTube videos. So I do know that kind of stuff. So, and if I want to make it a little bit more interesting and goofy and stuff like that, I could probably compel you to go a little bit further with it. So that's where it's very important to take that deep dive in the introduction to get it right, so you can sell it to people such that people are like, they're going to see it and they're going to say, that's kind of neat. What is going on there? Almost all the senior scholars are going to be, that's what their main job is to work on the framing, work on the sort of introduction. Anybody that's been in the field for many, many years, they're going to be thinking about that, because it is so much about that in terms of framing to get the paper through. Now, everything is important. Every line is important. But those first 4 pages are really what frame the conversation going forward, and it really, really is enticing for anybody that's going to read it. So spend a lot of time working on that introduction. I know it's hard, but really take the time to really sell it at the beginning, to get it through, to get people, just get interested in your article. You don't want to get them 4 pages in or 5 pages in and just be totally bored with the article, and then they're going to cash out, and then they're going to start getting their teeth in to the paper and really start digging into it and really start tearing it apart. You want to get them excited and happy in those first few pages. They're spending a lot of time. They're spending all of their time dedicated to something that is not benefiting them in any sort of way. So you want to make sure that they're in a happy state of mind by having something that's interesting at the beginning. Not just covering the basics, right? So what does it actually do? But really trying to figure out how to rope them in such that they're excited when they're looking at this. So, keep doing the things that you're doing. I would keep gathering interesting and well-designed data. If you can do that, work on selling your ideas to a larger audience. It's hard. It takes a lot of work, many months, many years to figure out how to sell a paper to a larger audience. Some people might argue with that, but I think that is the fundamental thing, is what we're trying to do is sell to a larger audience. And the more that you can get it, such that it's, going from a tiny audience that buys what you're doing to a huge audience that buys what you're doing, the more that you're going to have an impact, the more that the paper is actually going to matter. And that's why it takes so long for some people to actually write these things, because it is a really difficult thing to sort of sell what you're doing to a larger domain. And then the other thing is, you also are trying to think about other people are going to read this thing from outside of your domain. How do you entice them to come in and say, oh, that's interesting, I'm going to read more about this particular domain, and open it up to more people. So, with that, I really want to, wish you the best of luck on writing your research papers and stuff and going forward. So if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. And thank you so much if you participated in the survey. You folks are awesome. I love it that you're part of this community. Keep going, and we'll see you on the other side. Take care and have a wonderful day. Bye. God, that was a lot of colloquialisms, wasn't it? And a lot of goofs. Bye.